Okay, and remember, folks, if we talk too slow for you today, you can go down into that box in the YouTube place and you can crank it up and make it go 2 times as fast so we don't waste your time. Okay, let's go. I have just authorized a doubling of tariffs on steel and aluminum with respect to Turkey as their currency, the Turkish lira, slides rapidly downward against our very strong dollar. Aluminum will now be 20% and steel 50%. Our relations with Turkey are not good at this time.
Notice that he keeps hammering on Turkey, supposedly over one person. What a joke. No, he knows that they're NATO, and he knows that he needs them out. He is outing them. Since he got his foothold in a worldwide global transformation of the economy of the world, he's now going after the individuals with sanctions like North Korea, like Iran and Turkey and others. With these in Russia, with these sanctions, he does more than dropping bombs. Obama dropped bombs. Trump drops dollar bombs, economic bombs. It's capitalism at its best. It's an economic warfare that is completely legal and shows people that America is in charge again and is not just here to be gutted or taken advantage of like a piggy bank.
Well, how could, can you work in something about Gulen Fetullah in that statement?
Yes. Any minute, I think that he already has, that Erdogan, president of Turkey, will come out and say that Trump's part of the rogue CIA that's helping Fethullah Gulen try to depose him, and that's the reason he's arrested thousands and thousands of people who just cross his path, Erdogan, that is. And so, yes, he wants Fethullah Gulen, and we told you that that's why Trump teased him and said, I want this one minister back. That's it, a Christian guy. I want him back, and I want him back now, and I'm willing to break the back of your currency if you don't give him to me. That's not what it's about. He chose a guy that he knew he wouldn't give up without us giving up and allowing Erdogan to get Fethullah Gulen back in his country so that he can basically kill him. And so this is just a trick on Trump's part. People don't even know what's going on. What's going on is what we said before. Turkey should not be part of NATO, especially when a madman, a fascist Islamic dictator, is in charge of it. And so what is he doing here? He's simply showing the world who Turkey is. Remember, we've gone into the criminal activities of Turkey with the refugees and the...
But Thomas, what is NATO supposed to be protecting?
Against those nasty Russians.
Well, if Germany is doing financial deals with Russia, why would anybody need protection? I mean, why do we have NATO anymore?
It shouldn't even exist in the Atlantic Council. The worst propaganda machine in Europe and in America needs to simply be closed down because we now know the criminal activities of the people on the Atlantic Council.
Okay, now the next one. And this is August 10th. Sorry, I didn't say that up front. Democrats, please do not distance yourselves from Nancy Pelosi. She is a wonderful person whose ideas and policies may be bad, but who should definitely be given a fourth chance. She is trying very hard and has every right to take down the Democrat Party if she has veered too far left.
When I read this, Betsy, I laughed so hard. I thought, boy, Trump is just feeling his oats. He's feeling so good.
No, he's trolling. He's like a master troll.
Yeah, totally. And on so many levels, it's so dadgum funny because really, we've said this before because he has said things like this, but not quite so clear, that Nancy Pelosi is the best person in the Republican Party. She is the best person in the Republican Party. That's right, folks. She doesn't know where she is, what she's doing, what year she's in, who's the president, where her teeth are, or anything. The only thing she does is obstruct. And the second that they put a microphone in front of her, she just becomes a complete maniac. So it's beautiful. She is the best thing for the Republican midterms. That, along with her policies on DACA, because now it's very obvious, because Trump has called them out so many times on these stupid policies of the Democrats and in the Congress, but also in the Senate. And Nancy Pelosi leads it. And they think that she's a genius. She's not a genius at all. Show anything that she's done. She is a complete loser, a zero. And when you look at it, anything she's yelling about now, look at her record. She used to support it.
Well, Thomas, let me segue into a conversation I think we would like to have, and that is about elections and the fairness and transparency. And you just mentioned that with Nancy Pelosi. You have a lot on your mind about that.
Well, what we're seeing is that Harvard just released a study from a group they have called Just Facts. And they demonstrated that between 6 to 8 million illegal aliens voted in the last presidential election. So, as you know, they generally tend to vote Democratic. They may vote Republican this time, and that's the very funny thing about it. And so what we're seeing is there was tremendous election rigging last time. And then you can see the statistics that are coming out, and we've quoted this before, that Mike Pence and his investigation that was closed down quickly by the Democrats demonstrated huge amounts of fraud in elections. And now, what do we see? We have people calling for paper and pencil ballots. We have people calling for looking into these electronic machines that count them. We have people saying that, as President Trump has already done, he called together an entire group of people and put all the agencies on notice. This is going to be a clean election, and all of you will work this, and you'll work it now.
Yes, but when I went to vote the other day, my handwritten ballot went into one of these corrupt machines. This was the Hart Civic Interactive.
But at this point, we now know exactly who it is who would have to manipulate it once the total is in there. It'd be manipulated by PC Anywhere, by the Secretary of State in their office. And we've, with the help of Americans for Innovation and the Center for Self-Governance and our friends there, have written up a perfect example of a writ of mandamus that can be used anywhere as citizens to demand a proper chain of custody. And going through a digital machine is not a proper chain of custody because it can be manipulated. We've demonstrated how. The software in it is called Optech. So every single machine in America is ran by Optech, and in 17 states, George Soros owns the machines through Smartmatic. The Smartmatic machines, the Hart Intercivic machines are owned by who? Oh, that would be Mitt Romney. And who is it managed by? His son.
And who is the RNC chairwoman? His niece. I mean, hello, people, wake up.
So the elections are rigged. But now what we're seeing with Alex Jones being closed down and so many conservative sites being closed down, there were already hundreds, and the demonetization of these conservative sites on YouTube, through Google manipulation, and also on Facebook. Everybody can talk about the fact that those are private corporations and they have a right to do whatever they want and serve who they want. No, they don't. We've already demonstrated that these are civil rights issues, and when you're talking about hate speech, that's a completely different issue. That goes out of the realm of the private corporation. Plus, all of these corporations receive subsidies and funding from the United States government, as well as they were created by U.S. tax dollars. And so they are not private corporations.
And they stole their original software that they needed to run their platform. So they're thieves, they're liars, they use U.S. taxpayer money, and then when they do what they really were intended to do, surveil Americans and to shut down free speech, they hide behind we're a private company and we can do anything we want. Well, I got news for you, Silicon Valley boy soy kings. Isn't that what we call them?
Yeah, soy boys.
We the people have something to say about this too. And I say we yank every single federal dollar that's going to them. We make them come clean. We get the Miller Act notice signed, that check written that Leader Technologies put in. There are a lot of things we can do. Why are we sitting around here just twiddling our thumbs?
Well, Trump isn't. He is a mirror, and they've attacked him with election rigging, supposedly in a collusion with Russia. It's now shown everywhere. Now everyone gets to find out. It was the opposite. It was Hillary. That was the Russian collusion. Election rigging, yes, that was Eric Schmidt and the U.S. Digital Service. We've shown this. We've shown the template to win the election that Hillary actually paid from the GSA government funds to have these things written and put into place in Facebook. Now we know, as of just a few weeks ago, this month, George Soros gave billions of dollars, well, 1.5 billion, to Facebook in his attempt to control Facebook as it's going down. Well, Facebook is really a dead organization. It's dead in the water. And that's what people don't know. This is the last-ditch attempt before, in these midterm elections, if they cannot overthrow Trump and get the Congress to attempt impeachment, and then they'd have to get the Senate to approve it, and then they'd have to have a crime, which they don't have. But the point is that's their dream, the dream of the Democrats and Soros, who put $18 billion into these organizations you see that are funding the people in D.C. today, as they are there. Antifa, Black Lives Matter, SPLC, all those organizations received some of the $18 billion that Soros poured into this midterm and the next presidential election, because everything is at stake for these globalists. And if they can't get Trump out, and the Bilderbergers didn't come up with a plan, Trilateralists, the Council on Foreign Relations, no one came up with an effective plan. Nothing can stop him. The last-ditch attempt is to try to impeach him and mess with this election. But as they messed with the last election, because they thought Hillary was going to win and they were so transparent in their criminality, they showed who they were. So Cambridge Analytica came out. The Strategic Communications Laboratories came out. The control of our election machines by the Brits came out. All this stuff came out. Stephen Halper, all these, Sir Richard Dearlove, all these people, Andrew Wood, Alexander Downer. The conspiracy is now seen by everyone. So as they attack Trump now, it's kind of good, because what people don't understand is they think that we're losing, and we are losing. And there are many people falling in the battlefield. But at the same time, their deaths are not in vain. So these alternative news agencies...
They're figurative deaths, too.
The death of their presence on the internet. Mm-hmm. They now want to wipe them out. Wipe out websites.
Whole websites. Ours could be just wiped out one day.
Just wiped
Why?
it out.
Because some senator says, I don't like that website, off they go.
They can't wipe out Islamic fascist sites.
But they want those people because they're trying to overthrow the United States, people. And these are their warriors on the ground. You think these globalist neocon senators are going to get their hands dirty? No, they're going to send chumps out to do their work.
So as they tried to push on election rigging as an excuse, what's coming out? The opposite, the Trump effect, the mirror effect. It's bouncing off him, going back and landing on them and showing the stain of their own guilt. Because what are we finding out? The closer we get to this election, the more we find out the last one was rigged. For instance, let me just point something out. Facebook has lost half of its participants in 2 years, but it has not decreased its value in the stock market. Well, if Facebook was driven by advertisements and they lost half of their people, half of their clients, wouldn't that affect their income? It is fake, folks. Instagram, PayPal, all of those that came out of stealing the technology that you just mentioned, those are fake companies. And that's the reason that even Google and even YouTube, Eric Schmidt jumped, didn't he? And where is he now? He's in China perfecting the digital prison. The totalitarian digital prisons for each person in China is now being applied to America in its nascence, in its beginning stages. So what are we witnessing? What they thought was going to happen was all the power and economic control was going to go to China. That's what Kissinger and all the bigwigs said. Trump completely destroyed that plan. So now they're trying to bring that totalitarianism completely to America. George Soros spent $6 billion getting Obama elected, trying to get Hillary elected. He's spending $18 billion to try to win this midterm and get Trump out at the next election.
Okay, Trump says he has a very good phone call with Emmanuel Macron, president of France, discussed various topics, in particular security and trade. Many other calls and conversations today. Looking forward to dinner tonight with Tim Cook of Apple. He's investing big dollars in USA, and Betsy wants to know if they cooked apple pie for dessert.
Yes, they cooked up Tim.
Yeah.
And made him into an apple pie, because this is what Trump said to him. Why did you kick Alex off? Why did you make a personal decision? Why did you and Dude Zuckerberg decide that? I guess you really want a war with me. So your friend Eric Schmidt is over there in China, turning it into total digital totalitarianism, but you're not going to do that here. And you bring your, as he says, the trade is coming back to America. You bring your efforts back here and stop stealing taxes, or basically I'm going to crash you like I'm crashing them. What people don't know is that behind the scenes, Trump, the one-man team, is doing more than Dan Coats and the entire intelligence community could do to stop surveillance. Notice that why is everything coming out about all of the horrible surveillance of Facebook and all the horrible things they're doing, and Google and YouTube, why is all of that coming out? That's because Trump is behind the scenes activating all of that. So you can go with China if you want, but let me just tell you, you're going to be really sad when you see what comes up with China's economy in the next year.
Hey, but don't forget, Apple is like a number one stock on the stock market. So if they make a bad decision and they don't listen to Trump, they might find themselves like Harley Davidson.
Yes. Now, let me just read between the lines here for those of you who are wondering why in the world he would say this. Talking to Emmanuel Macron, a good old baby Macron, about trade. Wait. You can't do, wait. You have to do a trade deal with France through the European Union. Why would Trump be talking trade with France unless he's going to another bilateral agreement which is going to destroy European Union control, which is the European Union of George Soros and the European Central Bank. And what is he doing? Piece by piece, he's dismantling these horrifying trade deals that gutted America. And, talking to Macron, I imagine Macron really wants to talk to him because he's softened up now. Let's not even go into the problems that France has, because Italy is showing basically the criminality of George Soros and Angela Merkel to basically overthrow Europe. And so remember...
So how come NATO isn't going after George Soros if Soros seems to be the common enemy that all these countries have?
Because the Atlantic Council controls NATO, and George Soros donates more to the Atlantic Council than anyone else, and his people there, Alexander Chalupa, Dmitry Alperovich, and the whole gang, they are totally Soros.
Listen, I know it's a question that is, it just has to be asked, because if George Soros is the common enemy and we, the American taxpayers, are funding NATO to protect Europe from some boogeyman, we already know it's not Russia because Germany does business with Russia and we like Russia. It's not our enemy. George Soros is the frickin' enemy. So NATO needs to go after him and we need to stop funding NATO.
But the whole Privy Council is on board. Well, not the whole council, but the most powerful members of the British Privy Council are on board with Soros from the beginning. When you say Open Society Foundation, you might as well say European Union. That's what it was about. That's the basis of it, is this myth that opening your borders is a good thing. That's complete stupidity. If you can believe that, afterwards you can believe anything that George Soros tells you. And yes, after 18 color revolutions where he has destroyed economies, which then caused the death of millions of people, why don't they go after him? Because he is a tool of the rogue CIA. He was a Bushite. He was part of the Vulcans. He's been protected all along, and he's at the very top. He's protected by the British. He's protected by the American rogue CIA, and basically what you could call the criminal White House since the time of Jimmy Carter. We now know quite clearly, because of the election rigging that Carter approved of in Venezuela and other places, and that same system is still there to manipulate elections. And who controls those? Members of the Privy Council, Jeffrey Patty, Sir Lord Malik Brown.
So again, American taxpayers are funding NATO to protect George Soros, who is invading and destroying Europe.
Well, he uses Russia, Russophobia, as his excuse to clamp down on the truth, clamp down on elections, clamp down on everything except the Open Society Foundation theories and ideas. This ideology someday will be seen to be much like the Bolsheviks, or it's a horrifying form of communism that leads to chaos, that leads to economic vulturism. He's an economic vulture. He's an economic hawk. He's a terrorist, economic terrorist.
Well, do we have anyone in United States military intelligence that could connect these simple dots and go over there and take care of Soros or wherever Soros is and put an end to this? I mean, do you know what we pay our military and they can't figure this out?
George Soros gave up all the money he had, $18 billion, to get it out of his banks and out of his offshore accounts, to pour it into manipulation and control of Europe and America, which, because he's already got his control mechanisms in many other countries throughout the world. So at this point, you could go after his tax evasion, and then you could freeze all those dollars. And then
forget that. He is an enemy of the people of the world. They need to go over there and put him in shackles and put him in some cage awaiting his global military tribunal trial.
There are multiple cases against him in international courts saying that he's an economic terrorist, but they never go forward.
Why?
Because he is at the control of doing. He's the outer person. He's the representation. He's the representative. He's the salesperson for the globalists, for the New World Order. He is the number one salesperson for it.
Well, the best way to take down a company is to take down their number one salesperson.
That's a good point.
Because nothing happens until somebody's selling something. So let's take out George and start working our way down. And I want to see some action on this. We taxpayers are paying for the protection of our country. Where is our military? I'm so sorry to have to keep asking this.
The senior executive service members are in the military also. I have to remind you of that.
Well, when are we going to get rid of senior executive service? Because I know they're the domestic enemy running the show behind the scenes.
We believe, are slowly being dismantled, just like we believe that the surveillance of Americans through corporate mechanisms, the FANG, the big ones, or through Facebook, Amazon,
Apple, Netflix,
Google,
and Google.
Yeah, so but those corporations,
let's defang them,
are being defanged because Trump is going behind the scenes. Trump can simply say, "I'm canceling the contract you have, dude Zuckerberg, with the military for cloud computing. I'm canceling, Jeff Bezos, our contract with you, which you would falter and fail. I'm going to charge you taxes properly. I'm going to charge you for your U.S. postal services that you're using. I'm not going to underwrite any of you anymore." If he didn't underwrite those people, and if he didn't underwrite the major companies like AT&T and Viacom and all of them, all of the cable companies, they would fold. People don't understand that we have pseudo-monopolies going on that no one even acknowledges. Well, how does that happen? Because senior executive service members in all branches of the federal government make sure that the bureaucratic status quo continues. It's as simple as that. You can knock out one, but you can't knock out the replacement. So what they're doing, we just pointed this out, all of the GS-11s were bumped to 12 so that they can apply for 13s, which is where all SES members start, GS-13. That's because they're going to do merit pay, and they're going to do merit examinations, and they're going to do full security checks. That is going to wipe out thousands of members of the SES. That's the reason they're all going completely nuts. If they can't impeach Trump after the midterms, and if they don't win, and they won't, and if they can't impeach Trump, which they won't, they're going down. That's correct. They're going down.
And what happened to Dan Coates? He just belly flopped on us.
Dan Coates was overwhelmed by senior executives of members of the SES. That's the reason they're all going completely nuts. If they can't impeach Trump after the midterms, and if they don't win, and they won't, and if they can't impeach Trump, which they won't, they're going down. That's correct. They're going down.
And what happened to Dan Coates? He just belly flopped on us.
Dan Coates was overwhelmed by senior executive service members who don't allow him to say anything except his name, rank, and serial number, just as others who are put in those positions have to do.
All right. Next tweet. Thank you to Kanye West and the fact that he is willing to tell the truth. One new and great fact. African American unemployment is the lowest ever recorded in the history of our country. So honored by this. Thank you, Kanye, for your support. It is making a big difference.
And this is in reference to the very last tweet that he says, that he's proud of the lowest African American Hispanic unemployment rates in history. What is he saying? He's saying, I have done more for blacks and Hispanics than Obama did in 8 years. And I've done it in 18 months, and it's going to get a whole lot better. And
but Obama wasn't black. He's Indonesian.
Correct. That he acted like with his virtue signaling and all of his wonderful speeches that somebody wrote for him and he read, using the same techniques as Hitler. Look at the way Hitler gives a speech. Look at the way that Obama gave a speech. In the beginning, same exact methodology. It's a way to convince people that you're inspired when he wasn't. So what did he do? He did nothing. He sold African Americans down the tubes. He sold Hispanics down the tubes. And remember, he deported more people in his time each year than Trump has.
Well, he doesn't care. He's not an African American, and he should not have held the office of presidency because of his questionable birth background. So he doesn't have any skin in the game in America. So of course he sold us out.
Yeah, he was selling out to George Soros, who was his puppet master from the beginning. Now, Kanye West uses tremendous subliminal programming in his music, I understand, I'm told by experts. And so he knows about subliminal programming. So Kanye woke because he woke from the subliminal programming. He is not controlled by MSM. He actually has his own ego, his own I am, his own consciousness that can stand up to what he manipulates, just as Trump manipulates the media. And when he manipulates it, he realizes that using subliminal controls and subliminal messaging is part of the game. And that's the reason that he's a huge success. And that's the reason that he's able to undo the neural networks that have been created by the narratives that have been projected by the mainstream media and Hollywood and basically all media.
And the last tweet for this segment is, deal with Mexico is coming along nicely. Auto workers and farmers must be taken care of or there will be no deal. New president of Mexico has been an absolute gentleman. Canada must wait. Their tariffs and trade barriers are far too high. We'll tax cars if we can't make a deal.
Goodbye, Canada. You're up there doing your silly nonsense, and Saudi Arabia squished you like a bug because you were trying to do your virtual signaling,
But we are not talking about the good citizens of Canada here. We're talking about their leaders that are just as corrupt as ours.
The elected officials.
Yes.
So don't be asleep. Elect different officials. So Canada, you're doing a horrible job. Your attempt at trying to respond to the tariffs is so childish, so infantile, it will get you absolutely nowhere. What don't you understand? There are no more trade deals. There are bilateral agreements that are based upon temporary agreements that will be adjusted over time, not gigantic trade agreements that tie the hands of Americans and basically gut us. And while our hands are tied, you steal everything we have. You steal our products, you raise the price, and then you sell them to other countries. You simply gouge us. And the gouging is not a friend. So if you think that because you're a neighbor, Canada or Mexico, you're wrong, that we are going to treat you as a friend. We're going to treat you in a trade deal as the criminals that you have been showing yourself to be. Now, I just want to point out, Trump isn't doing any more group trade deals. It's all bilateral. So if you don't get that, and if you don't get it, that it's between your country's leaders, our leader, our one leader, and his team is doing what he tells them to do. And if your leader is an idiot, like so many world leaders, thinking that they can cluster together like a pack of wolves to then essentially attack America through trade deals, through currency manipulation, through all kinds of nonsense, you're wrong. And Mexico, let's remember that this silly man who just got elected president of Mexico basically had declared war upon us. During the election, he said that it's the right of every Mexican to breach our border, go into our country, take our money, and send it back to Mexico. That was the first or second plank in his platform. Now he's being a gentleman to Trump. He's licking his feet because Trump knows he's in a war with Mexico. And I mean a physical, literal war at our southern border. And this silly, I don't even want to say his name. He doesn't even deserve having a name. The president of Mexico is a drug cartel puppet. He said so. He gave amnesty to all drug cartels now and forever. Did anybody hear what this madman was preaching? I haven't heard preaching like this since literally fascism in Europe. This is unbelievable fascism we have on our southern border. And Trump, thank heavens, is sticking to his guns. He is not going to let Mexico and their rhetoric or their drug cartels take over our southern border and come into our country, which they are attempting to do and have been for years. Finally, because we have the National Guard on our border, recognizing the fact that we are in a national emergency because we have no southern border with a country that is in fact at war. 10,000 people were killed during the last election. 10,000 people.
Mexican election.
In the Mexican election. I forget, 2,700 or so of them were officials running. Some of the people ran their election from prison, won, and because they got elected, they got out of prison. These are drug cartel leaders. Mexico couldn't be any more messed up than it is. I just can't imagine. They have built a border on their southern border to keep people coming into their country, stop them from coming illegally, and they allow people to march across their country with amnesty, that's not a friend. That's not what a friend does. So what we have with Mexico, sorry, it isn't over, folks. By the time it's done, Canada and Mexico will be crying. They will be on their knees begging to have any deal, not to have NAFTA continued. Most people don't know NAFTA's dead, but sorry, we'll tell you today, NAFTA's dead.